Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into Tuparent.
Sounds intriguing. What's the draw with Tuparent? What do they do?
They're all about optimizing short-term rental properties, helping owners make the absolute most of their listings.
Gotcha. So for folks who are thinking, uh, managing my rental is more stressful than a beach vacation with toddlers, Tuparent might have some solutions.
Exactly. They don't shy away from the pain points. In fact, they address them head on.
Like what? What are some of these common issues they're tackling?
Well, the first thing they highlight is the risk of limiting yourself to just one sales channel.
Ah, I see. So instead of, say, only listing on Airbnb, you want to diversify, branch out to other platforms like Booking.com or Vivo.
Precisely. Cast a wider net, reach more potential guests. Tuparent argues that sticking to just one platform is a surefire way to limit your reach and ultimately your income potential.
Makes sense. In this day and age, people are booking through all sorts of avenues. You don't want to miss out on those bookings.
Absolutely. And you know what else they're really big on?
Let me guess. Crafting the perfect online presence. Photos that pop, descriptions that sing.
You got it. Your online presentation is your first impression, your digital curb appeal. If it doesn't grab attention, those clicks will quickly turn into clicks on someone else's listing.
It's all about standing out in a crowded market. And I'm guessing clear communication is part of that too, right? Making sure guests have all the info they need.
Absolutely. Think seamless check-in instructions, Wi-Fi passwords readily available, that kind of thing.
Because the last thing you want is a guest bombarding you with questions at all hours.
Exactly. It's all about minimizing those frantic, where's the corkscrew messages at 2 a.m.
So we've covered sales channels and presentation. What other landmines do they say to avoid?
Well, they weren't exactly fans of fixed rental rates.
Ah, so no more setting a price and forgetting about it, regardless of the season or demand.
It's a no-go, according to Tuparent. They argue that fixed rates are a recipe for missed opportunities, especially in such a dynamic market.
It's like trying to navigate by the stars in a snowstorm. You need to be flexible and responsive to the ever-changing conditions. Demand for short-term rentals can be affected by so many things: holidays, local events, even the weather.
Exactly. And speaking of things that change constantly, Tuparent also highlighted the headaches that come with relying solely on manual communication. Those endless back and forth emails, answering the same questions repeatedly.
Oh, tell me about it. It's a recipe for burnout. All those hours spent glued to your inbox could be better spent on, well, almost anything else.
Right. Imagine what you could do with all that extra time if you weren't chained to your inbox 24/7. So less manual labor, more automation. Got it.
So if those are the pitfalls, how does Tuparent suggest we sidestep them? What's their grand strategy?
They've come up with this really interesting framework they call levels of operation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So picture a ladder with 6 rungs, each one representing a different stage in a rental owner's journey. You start at the bottom as a beginner.
Just dipping your toes in, testing the waters.
Exactly. And as you gain experience, adopt new strategies, and hopefully embrace more technology, you climb higher.
And what's at the top of this ladder? What's the ultimate goal?
The pinnacle of short-term rental success. They call it the visionary level.
Now, who wouldn't want to reach those visionary heights? But I'm guessing most people listening are somewhere in between. How do they define, say, the difference between a beginner and, let's say, an expert?
So a beginner is typically someone just starting out, likely with one property, relying on a single sales channel and handling most tasks manually.
Old school pen and paper style.
Pretty much. An expert, on the other hand, has probably scaled their operations considerably.
Multiple properties, multiple platforms.
Exactly. They're likely managing listings across various platforms using channel management software.
Channel management software. Now that sounds interesting. What's the deal with that?
Imagine a centralized dashboard where you can update your listings, availability, and pricing across all those platforms simultaneously.
No more logging in and out of a million different websites, struggling to keep everything in sync.
Exactly. And on top of that, experts are also likely using dynamic pricing to stay ahead of the curve.
So they're not just setting a price and hoping for the best. They're adjusting their rates based on real-time market data, demand, and even things like local events.
You've got it. It's all about staying agile and making sure your pricing is always on point. Okay, because we've talked about common issues, those easy to fall into traps, and this ladder of levels of operation. But what's the driving force behind Tuparent's whole approach? What's the key ingredient in their secret sauce?
Is it personalized service? Magical fairies? What's the magic word?
Data. They're all about data-driven decisions.
Makes sense. You can't really optimize what you don't understand, right? You need that data to make informed decisions.
Exactly. They're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. They've analyzed a massive amount of data. We're talking over 500 short-term rental transactions to understand the factors that really move the needle.
So what kind of factors are we talking about? Give me the inside scoop.
Everything from seasonal trends and competitor pricing to local events and even things like weather patterns. They're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to gathering those data-driven insights.
It's like having a crystal ball, but instead of vague predictions, it's giving you actionable data. Now, I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world?
Well, to answer that question, we have to look at Tuparent's track record, and they've got a pretty compelling case study.
Oh, a case study. Hit me with it. I love a good success story. What did they do?
They put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, and used their own rental property in Ruka, Finland as a tester ground.
Ruka, Finland. Okay, I'm picturing cozy cabins, snowy landscapes. So what happened? Did those data-driven strategies pay off?
Big time. Between July and September of this year, their Ruka property had an occupancy rate of 81.67%.
Hold on. 81.67%. That's impressive for any time of year, but especially during those months. What's the average occupancy rate in Ruka during that same period?
A mere 37%, so they're more than doubling the average.
Wow, that's a testament to the power of, well, knowing your stuff. But it's not just about filling rooms, is it? What about the guest experience? Were they happy campers?
That's the best part. Not only did they manage a whopping 31 bookings in those 3 months.
31 bookings. Talk about a busy summer. Okay, but how smoothly did everything actually run?
They said it barely felt like work, and their guests seemed to agree.
Let me guess. Rave reviews.
They scored a 9 out of 10. Clearly they're doing something right, and they really emphasized that it wasn't this all-consuming thing. They managed all of that while keeping things manageable, which I think a lot of us are looking for.
Yeah, who wants to be tethered to their laptops 24/7, right? So how did they find that balance? What's their secret sauce for a manageable workload with those kinds of numbers?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, automation. They've really streamlined their processes, especially when it comes to communication.
Ah, so less of the back and forth, more upfront information readily available for the guests.
Precisely. Think digital guidebooks with all the essential details, proactive messaging. They're anticipating those guest needs before those frantic help texts even have a chance to be typed out.
Smart. So it sounds like they've got the communication piece down pat.
Yeah.
But what about that dynamic pricing thing we touched on? Did that factor into their success in Ruka?
Absolutely. They said it was one of the key ingredients. Their dynamic pricing strategy allowed them to capitalize on those high demand periods, those weeks when everyone's clamoring for a Ruka getaway, but also stay competitive during the shoulder season.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal here, but let's address the elephant in the room. Every property is different. Every market has its own quirks. What would you say to those listening who are thinking, well, that's great for a property in Ruka, Finland, but my situation is totally different?
I think it's a fair question. And Tuparent seems to anticipate that because they actually offer a service to address that very concern.
Oh, tell me more. What is this magical service?
They call it a property assessment. For €100, they'll do a deep dive into your property's performance, comparing it to similar listings in your area, identifying areas where you might be leaving money on the table.
€100, that's a steal.
Yeah.
It's like a health checkup, but for your rental property. You get expert advice tailored to your unique situation.
Exactly. And what I like is that it's not just about pointing out what you might be doing wrong. They're all about providing concrete, actionable recommendations that you can actually implement to improve your listing and boost those bookings.
It's like having a short-term rental coach in your back pocket, guiding you towards success. I like it. So it's not just for seasoned pros who are already juggling multiple properties. Even someone who's just starting out, maybe thinking about listing their property for the first time, could benefit from this.
Absolutely. It's all about setting yourself up for success from the get-go.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Common pitfalls, the importance of data-driven decisions, those 6 levels of operation, the ins and outs of Tuparent's approach, their impressive results in Ruka, and even this property assessment offer. If our listeners were to take away just one thing from this deep dive, what would you say it should be?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the short-term rental market is constantly changing.
It's not a set it and forget it kind of business, is it?
Not at all. Those who are willing to adapt, to embrace technology and those data-driven insights, those are the ones who are going to not just survive, but thrive in this ever-evolving landscape.
So no more just listing your property and crossing your fingers, hoping for the best.
The days of passive income are over. You've got to be proactive, strategic, and informed if you want to stand out from the crowd and maximize your rental income.
Tuparent's story really underscores that point, wouldn't you say? They're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk, and the results speak for themselves.
Exactly, and they've taken that experience and those hard-won insights and turned them into a system that can benefit other rental owners. It's pretty inspiring. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Tuparent, we want to leave you with this. What's one small step you can take today to move your property, even just a little bit, towards that visionary level? It doesn't have to be some huge, overwhelming thing.
Yeah, even baby steps can make a difference in the long run, right?
Exactly. Maybe it's finally trying out a channel management tool so you're not constantly glued to your computer, updating calendars.
Free up some mental bandwidth. Or, hey, maybe it's running a little experiment with dynamic pricing for a few weeks just to see how it impacts your bookings.
And if you're really ready to dive in head first, you can always book that property assessment with Tuparent.
For €100, it's a pretty low-risk way to potentially unlock some serious revenue growth. It's like they say, knowledge is power.
And in the world of short-term rentals, where things change by the minute, that's never been more true.
Couldn't agree more.
So there you have it. We've explored the ins and outs of Tuparent, from their data-driven strategies to their impressive results.
And hopefully busted a few myths about short-term rentals along the way.
Exactly. Now it's your turn to take what you've learned and turn it into action.
Until next time, happy hosting.
And happy earning. See you all soon.